Hey, I'm Tommy Chong. Welcome to High on Homegrown.
Yes, everybody, and welcome to High on Homegrown, the cannabis podcast from PercysGrowRoom.com. So before we move on to this week's Grow Guides, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we have some competitions coming up over the next few weeks over on the live stream. So make sure you come and join us on the live stream this week, everybody, on Sunday, and there'll be a chance to win a $75 voucher and a $50 voucher. That's two prizes given away every week for the next 4 weeks, where you can go and spend $75 or $50 over at phenoseeds.com. All you have to do is be involved in the chat and you'll be added to the wheel of names. We'll spin it and it will pick the winners for us. We're going to do that for 4 weeks. So make sure, if you're free, you come and join us over on the live stream, which will be at youtube.com/high-on-homegrown. So if you can make it, it would be great to see you over there on Sunday. That's 9 p.m. GMT. It's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and I think, but I'm not too sure, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning if you're in Australia. For now, here is this week's Grow Guides, which is all about getting good yields from your grow. So thanks for downloading. I'll speak to you at the end of this. See you in a bit. So episode 42 of Grow Guides, 42.0, 420. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about how to be getting bigger yields from your grow, how to make it more efficient, essentially, more buds from the same grow. And you have to grow less throughout the year if you wanted to, or you can just have more weed. And more weed is always good because you can make your hash, you can make some rosin, you can do all sorts of shit with it. Then you don't just have to use the flower. Wow. You got spare buds to do fancy shit with, like Double Hawk does.
Oh, it's not just me.
No. Some of us do other things
expert.
besides just smoke it. We cook with it, we make hash with it, and some people make rosin with it, and all kind of fancy things.
Yeah, fucking light my lighter.
Well, I can't spend $600 on a fucking piece of smoking equipment and then not use it.
Oh, sure. That would be sacrilege, bro.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there's always more you can do with it. So it's always good to have. It's better to have too much than not enough. Yeah. So store that shit up, make some extra hash of it if you want to. And then if you have plenty, then you can even take a few weeks off growing or, God holiday or something.
What?
Like that.
Oh, you made me laugh and blow my lighter out, you fuck. Can't light it.
Yeah, crazy talk. But
sticky.
No, it's my gloves are slippery.
But, before we begin and say, you explain how you can get bigger yields. Yield isn't everything most of the time. When you want a good, high quality weed, that's the most important thing. So aim for quality, and yield comes secondary to that. As long as you're growing enough, of course, you always want to be growing enough. You don't want to run out. But what should we start with here with the best way to get a big yield? I mean, there's always grow more plants, but if you're growing more plants, you need more space. So it's not so much of a problem if you're growing outdoors, but mainly when you're growing indoors, there is only a certain amount of plants you can grow with the space that you have. You can't pack them in too much.
So I guess what we're looking at then is maximizing the yield per space used.
Mm-hmm. Which I would say, there's two different ways to do it, really. I'd like to go with the old 4x4 grow tent and put 4 plants in it, and then you'll get a decent yield out of that. But you can put like 16 small plants in it for the sea of green, and you'll get a decent amount then. That's two different methods you can use to get more weed. But if we just focus on the 4x4 method right now, the 4 plants in a 4x4, then that would work, because scrogging is one of the things that I'd first recommend, because you want to make the most out of the space you've got. You want to make the most out of the cannabis space. So to fill that out properly by scrogging your plants, that's going to be the best way. That's the best way I've got. That's the way I use to get the best yields. The best yields I've had have all been scrogged grows.
Yeah. I would say your point about canopy space is the key. Mm-hmm. However you do it, whether, like you said, 16 plants across the space in each square foot, 4 plants in each 4 square foot, as long as you can have every square inch ascend, like hypothetically, it's never that good, but every possible square inch of your canopy should be even and covered. You don't want to have any holes in it. You don't want to have any wasted space. And scrogging is a great way to do that because you have your net and you weave it and you can kind of take it wherever you need. I personally, I do more plants. I did 8 in my 4x4 this last grow. That's what I'm actually trimming the last of here. And I'm doing the math here, and I'm gonna be around 800 grams, I think, dry out of
Nice.
and out of a
Very
500. Yeah. So it's around 1.5 grams per watt because of the 530 watt Spider Farmer light that's in there, which is pretty respectable, right? But it's because I was able to have every fucking square inch basically that I could of effective area covered and growing buds. So.
Yeah, I think a commercial grower back in the day, when I first went through one of my first commercial grows, explained it very simply. Said if you have any light that's reaching the floor, you're just wasting money.
Yeah.
So yeah, your canopy needs to capture every bit of light. Nothing should be hitting the floor when you're in late flower.
Yep, scrogging is the best way to make the most out of your canopy space, but not everybody can do that. So the next thing we would recommend after that is topping. You know, topping the plant, making sure that it's growing, and with some training, some low stress training as well, topping and training. So you're growing the plant horizontally as much as possible rather than vertically.
That's what I do, topping.
I topped the heck out of mine multiple times.
Yeah. It has to be done, man, because when you top your plant the first time round as well, it's not just about removing the top and it grows sideways instead, but it sends a certain hormone around the plant to let you know that it's lost the main top and it needs to produce more tops around the edges. So instead of growing one main cola in the middle, it'll grow more bigger buds around the edges. They won't end up to be as big as the main cola unless you train it for a while longer. But
I like my crowns though.
But do you not top yours?
But
no.
See,
no,
I've only ever done one auto flower grow where I didn't top it, and it was terrible, man. It just,
Well, I mean, Bubblehawk's grow technique is completely different to most everybody else's here, but you can't argue with his results at all. So, I mean, there's more than one way to get that massive yield out of it.
There is. I employ a lot of LST. It is mainly LST. I've accidentally topped in the past, but I don't do it on purpose. And the last time it happened, I actually got a better yield off the untopped plant than I did off the top plant. So
you don't top it all. You just bend and shit.
I just bend, man. Yeah.
Nice. You get into the severe shit like super cropping and shit too.
I have in the past, but I tend not to now. I just majoritively just bend them down, pull them over, stretch them out, and let the lower sights come up. And then as they keep coming up, I just keep bending.
That's all I do too. Much lower level than yours, obviously, but it works great, right? I mean, nothing wrong with that, and it's easy too.
I think everybody's doing basically the same thing, and that is trying to get more bud sites exposed and growing. So whether you're bending or you're topping, you're still doing the same thing. You're just trying to get more bud sites in the light.
That's it. However you do it, get used to how you do it and become more experienced at it, and you'll get more buds out of your grow. So that's an important factor right there, is just experience.
Yeah. For me, I don't want to scrog because I like to be able to get in my tent and move shit around kind of if I need to. Some of my plants finish earlier than others, so I need to take them down. I usually do a different amount of, and I like variety. And so Mackie and his 4-plant scrog, it's perfect because everything finishes the same. You can focus, everything grows the same, especially because you're using generally either very similar seeds or clones, and everything is like just streamlined. So, but both of us still maximize our canopy space, and we both result in shitloads of weed out of pretty small space, relatively speaking.
That's it, man. Just maximize the space that you have. That, like Monkey said, if there's any light hitting the floor, then you're wasting money. There should be leaf at least to catch that light.
Yeah, now that's going to be an exception if you're running early veg and your plants are tiny, but yeah,
Mhm.
you know, we're talking mid to late flower. By then your plant should be big enough to catch everything.
Right.
Mm.
Genetics are important too. You know,
Yeah.
if you're running a fucking critical versus, I don't know, an OG or something, probably your critical is going to have these big, huge horse dick buds where OG is kind of like bud, sparse
Mhm.
along the nodes with. So genetics can make a big difference, but you know, quantity doesn't equal quality, as we well know. And if you get a real potent, just annihilator strain that maybe produces 70% as much as another one, but is just awesome in every way, I mean, you could smoke less of it then, right? And so that's to consider too. But yeah, if you're just after pure yield, then do your research and find some good big genetics that are bred.
Yeah. And once you got everything topped and trained, you know, when you start to get into flower, I think the lollipop is actually a big part of getting a proper yield out of it. Because if you're wasting energy on those low energy bud sites at the bottom, in the end, you really end up with more trim and not as much bud.
Yeah.
So proper lollipop, and that's something that new growers need to have a little courage and get up there and give it a shot, because it takes a little while to develop your get your exact type of lollipop down to where you're comfortable with it. But once you get there, you'll get a higher yield of higher quality. And that's what you're really, really after, higher yield of higher quality buds.
It's like taking them off the bottom. You don't really lose them. It's just they grow on the top instead.
Yeah.
You know,
And they're
that's how I like
stickier
something.
and nicer and, you know, more of it on the top.
See how larfy and shitty this little one looks? I know you won't be able to hear this in the audio version, but yeah, these, you know, it's not like all of this weight would go into the very top, but you know, maybe a portion of it wouldn't have to focus anything on here, and it could get anything extra it had into the top. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, man. What about you? What you say, Marge? You got any tips here on how you can increase yield?
Well, as a current micro grower, probably choosing your strain is probably one of the best things to look for, because I know that I have a small, I actually have one at the moment because I lost a couple of plants recently, but I've been looking at TGs that he's been growing, and I have a little bit of weed envy with his micro grow, and I would love to get some of the yields that he has, but I think he
green
did
with
post...
envy, you might say.
I am green with envy, but I think he posted a bunch of pictures of his micro grow, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, TG, but you had the purple god bud, which seemed to be quite a bit smaller than some of the other varieties that you were growing.
Yeah.
And that's what I happen to have going right now. So that particular cultivar is not going to yield as much as some of the other ones you might choose. So that does make a big difference sometimes.
I like it because it stays very short, but yeah, you're right. It's not gonna, like, I have some crosses I made of Charlotte's Angel, Dutch Passion, Charlotte's Angel CBD, and my Crystalline Entity in my micro tent that I got to bring down in the next week. And those things, like, they're at least 3 to 4 times longer and thicker than my purple god bud. So
oh yeah, they're gorgeous.
massive.
Yeah.
But
that's where I was green with envy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean,
choosing the strain can make a huge difference in the end.
Yeah.
And then the grow medium as well. And if you're going to go for, if you want to chase a really big yield, then doing some big DWC with loads of air stones and loads of root space, a deep water culture grow. And that's a great way to get yield quickly.
Bigger roots, bigger fruits, right?
And that's an important point there as well. Root space, man. Make sure your plant's got plenty of root space and it'll grow big flowers. More roots, more shoots, more fruits.
I want to throw in making sure your environment is as close to perfect as you can get it, because that matters. You know, if you've got it too hot, the buds are going to be more larvae. You know, you're going to get different expressions coming through from heat. If it's too cold, they won't get as big. They stunt a little bit. You know, there's a whole host of things that can go sideways from having things out by even just a few degrees. So if you can try and keep it as even across the board as possible and keep it in that happy Goldilocks zone, that will go a long way to ensuring that those buds actually have the right amount of time to get up and get nice and fat for you as well.
And that's a point with the larvae bit there as well. You need to cut down the amount of nitrogen the plant is getting in the flowering stage. And so then it won't grow so larvae. It grows more dense if you reduce the amount of nitrogen the plant gets. So make sure you do that when it comes to the flowering stage, and because feeding is important as well, making sure the plant's getting the right food at the right stage of growth.
Yeah.
On that point,
sorry.
on that point of no, sorry, I was just gonna say on the point of nitrogen too is one, don't forget that there are additives things. If you're using things like CalMag, a lot of the time that CalMag comes from nitrates, so that's going to raise some of your nitrogen as well. So you just got to be wary that as you're increasing, you're keeping in mind that if you're adding those extra little bits, that they will add extra nitrogen too. So you've got to be careful with adding that, because that will contribute to the larf if you're not careful.
Yep. Will happen.
Yeah, man. Sorry, TJ.
I just wanted to echo Bubbles' point about, environment and nutrients and stuff too. Just keeping your plant a healthy plant, providing it with all of what it needs when it needs it. Don't stress it out. That'll provide the best environment to produce the biggest buds that it can genetically.
Yeah. When it doesn't have to stress about things, when it doesn't have to fight to stay alive, then it can fight to thrive. It can thrive instead of just surviving, because it's got all the food it needs. It's in a beautiful environment. It's in a nice sized pot with the right amount of moisture in the soil or the medium. Which
honestly, man, that's why I think my super soil works as well as it does. For as little analysis and research as I have really done to it, just because I found a really good ratio that provides the plant with everything it needs for its entire life, and it takes it when it needs it, and it's just like chilling, and I get good yields. And I don't know, people ask me all the time, like, how can I increase my yield in organic soils and stuff, and I'm just like, use a good fucking soil. Super soil, use one that doesn't run out of shit halfway through it, or you have to supplement with this or that,
and one that's not too dense as well, making sure there's plenty of air getting to the root zone, and
all those things for sure.
There's so many things that need to be taken into consideration.
Just grow a healthy plant,
make sure the plant's happy from start to finish. That comes with the experience. The more experienced you are, the better yield you're going to be getting out you grow. It just goes without saying.
So I suppose nail down the basics and the rest will follow.
Bingo, yeah.
Pretty much.
I don't think there's any magic, like, make your dick bigger pill for bugs.
No, there's no magic bottle you can pour on your plant, even though the nutrient companies make you think there is.
Yeah.
Don't buy that from the nutrient companies. You don't need that grow bigger this or that and other stuff. No.
Or the bro science.
Oh, heck no.
Yes. Nail through the stem. All that.
I'll give you big buds.
Yeah, any of that extra nutrient stuff too. Like it's one of those things that I've found that you could walk into a store and there's 1,000 different things that they're going to try and sell you. They're there to make money. As long as you're keeping it giving it what it needs, and that's you want to boost your PKs in flower, you want to make sure you got plenty of nitrogen and stuff like that in veg, you'll be fine. You don't need to be adding bud candy and big bud this and all that shit. It's really not going to do anything. The only time that may do something is if everything else is perfect. So if you're focused on the basics, you should be getting that stuff without those extra added stuff anyway.
Yeah, if you're going to buy some of that extra weird stuff like that, add one thing at a time and do you grow and see if it actually does you any good. One of those things. And then you can actually assess whether it's worth it and you want to keep with it or not. If you start adding everything, something's going to go sideways on you.
Yeah. Because it's just extra added things that you got to chase down if something goes wrong.
And it's like you said, this might have a little nitrogen here and a little phosphorus there. And before you know it, things are way out of whack.
Yeah.
So go slow. And if you're going to test new additives, now I'm not saying all additives are bad. I do use a couple myself, but I've tested them slowly and it's taken me years to decide these are the ones I want to use. And that's what you really need to do for a good yield. Find what works well with your growth style.
Yeah, bit by bit.
A bit. Yeah.
Could you say something there, Marge?
I'm trying to remember what it was. I think maybe it was just to Mackie's point or Monkey's point about adding everything back in, because then you have to figure out if you add it all in together, then you don't know, and it causes problems, then you don't know which one it is, and then you're fucked. So
kind of like baking, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
You don't want to change everything all at once. Make one change.
That actually applies to a lot of things in life, honestly, because
it does.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, there's so many small things that need to be taken into consideration to get the maximum yield, getting the peak. But definitely ways to get a better yield is by topping, training, scrogging if possible. You know, just trying to maximize your canopy space. And the better you can do that, then the more bud sites you're going to get, and the more buds are going to grow, which is going to get you better yield. But then you have to keep them buds happy as well. So, you know, water the plant properly, feed the plant properly, make sure you're getting plenty of potassium and phosphorus during the flowering stage.
100%.
Yeah.
Those 2 points, you know, that's all you need. Keep the plant happy and maximize your canopy space, and you will get the most yield you can possibly get out of the genetic you're growing. Yep.
Yeah, man.
Easy.
That's it. Along with genetics. That's another big one.
You had in your notes as well, good lighting. We haven't really talked a lot about that yet, but you know, that's always not always, let's say, but it's frequently a problem that new growers have is that, hey, I did it. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody because I did the same thing. You buy a light, you think it's going to be good enough, and you're going to get a deal on this light, and then you buy it and you find out it's not the light you thought it was. So you sometimes do a little research, find a really good quality grow light that's going to give you good quality light to your plants and enough of it, and your yields will follow.
Yeah, much like you, I've got a cupboard of shame.
I think every grower's
filled
got
with
those.
bad purchases.
Yeah.
I go get mine right now. They're just over there. But
See, there you go. Everybody's got a little scrap pile somewhere.
Yeah, I've got a lot of old gear in the loft for sure.
I think that falls within keeping the plant happy, but it's a really good point. I think it does warrant mentioning on itself, by itself too, you know, because the light is the most, like, it's the limiting factor. You know, if you have perfect nutrients and perfect heat and everything, if you don't have a good light, you're only going to be using 50% of all of those other things. So
because your plant is going to take that light and use all the nutrients and shit to turn itself into food, to turn the light and water. What's that whole? There's the equation, right? Where light plus water, it breaks it down and releases oxygen, right?
CO2. Light, water, and CO2.
Yeah, light, water, and CO2. That's right. And it makes sugars and starches and shit. And this is how the plant works.
Oxygen,
yeah. So you need that good light to make sure that the plant is
ATP
doing as much as it can, and it will use a certain amount of light every day. And when it's had enough, it will start going into rest, and that's when the leaves get a bit droopy towards the end of the day. So make sure your plant's getting plenty of light, and the more you can give it, the better. It will tell you when it's had enough, and then you can, you know, remove some if necessary. But make sure you got plenty of light.
To that point, the correct light for the correct space is another big one. No point trying to use a SF1000 in a 4x4 because it's not going to give you what you're after.
Only if you're planning on growing one moderate size plant under it.
Yeah,
you're not going to light the entire tent with it.
I'm just envisioning this like spotlight of this plant like on stage.
90 watts of goodness pumping away.
They're good lights, but yeah, definitely you know, scale the light to the space. That's a big one.
I mean, don't be trying to use a HLG Scorpion in a 60-centimeter tent either. It's not going to work. It's not going to fit.
It'd catch fire in about 30 minutes.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I had a grow. I ran 400 watts LED in less than a half a square meter just to see what would happen, and I got weed out of it. Wasted a lot of energy, but I got weed.
Yeah. Yeah, diminishing returns, and ultimately you can fucking fuck up your plant with too much light too.
Yeah.
But that's it. Just keeping the plant happy throughout the whole growth.
Tails laid on if you're not careful.
I mean, the main points you can take away from this episode on how to get the better yield is make sure you choose the right strain. You know, you choose a medium that you're used to. Because that's going to be an important factor is the experience you have with a particular medium. But if you're not sure, if you're new to growing and you want to pick a good medium that's going to get good yield quickly, then deep water culture is going to smash it. So do that with air stones, a lot of root space there, and you can deliver a shitload of food to the plants all the time, constantly. They're very happy doing that. That's the biggest yields I've seen out of my tents. DWC growing a scrog, smash it. Just shitloads of weed. But that takes work. You know, it's not as if you just plant the seeds and they grow. That takes a lot of work, daily work, man. A couple of times a day, visiting the grower, making sure everything's balanced properly. It's a lot of work. You do have to work hard for it.
I'm going to throw one last piece of advice out there. If you're not already a member at Percy's Grow Room, which is absolutely free, come over to Percy's, run a diary, and we will help you get a yield.
We will help you.
We actually answer questions over there. We don't mind answering questions. So if you have questions about how to get a better yield, come run a diary, ask questions. We'll guide you along that path.
That's right, man. And because everything's different as well, it depends on your specific situation on how you could personally increase the yield of your grows. And it will be different for you than it is for another member. It just depends on your situation and what you're working with. So, it's always better to come and ask for specific advice regarding your own personal situation, because everybody's different.
Yeah, and I suppose on that point, when you come over and say hello, and you say, give us as much information as you can without putting your foot in it, if you know what I mean. Yep. Like as much information as you are comfortable giving us. We don't need your address, we don't need your name, we don't need any of that. But whatever you're planning to do and what you want out of the grow, let us all know. And then there's going to be members there that have been in a similar situation, and they'll be able to sort of help point you in the right direction if one of us can't.
Chilbert just brought up a good one there, man. CO2. Using CO2 in your grow room will increase the yield, but it has to be used correctly. You can't just be, you stick CO2 in there and everything will be fucking suddenly growing faster. You need to have a pretty much a sealed room so the CO2 stays in there for a while. Using your extractors on your tents, it's going to be putting the air out like 2 or 3 times a minute. All of the air is removed out of the grow room and replaced. So it's just going to keep sucking that CO2 out. A little bit will get to the plants, but not as much as you'd like. If it's a closed system, then that can work out, but then you got to watch your humidity and temperature levels. So it's another thing to balance out. Sorry, TG?
I was just going to say, I don't know if you're going to get to it. Maybe. Sorry if I cut you off.
That's all good.
You need to jack up your light. You need more light and more in order to effectively use CO2 too. So
yeah,
that can be difficult. And you don't want to be putting fucking heaters and shit around. I don't know. Do you really think like CO2 bags, those canisters and shit?
No, they don't work, bro.
Are they worth it?
No, really? I don't think they're worth it. I don't ever recommend CO2 for a home grower. Really, it's just
I tried them early on and I don't use them anymore, so I guess I don't believe in them.
It's just an expensive setup for no reason. It's not going to make enough of a difference.
I can't get the yield I need without them.
Sorry, Bubble.
I was going to say I find they matter most in veg anyway. All right. Okay. To be fair, that's when you're going to, because it's kind of like the idea is that you make it like an ancient rainforest. And it should be, you're coming in and there's almost condensation on the walls sort of thing. That's the sort of humidity that you're working with CO2. Otherwise it's not going to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And then once you're coming into flower, if you're messing with that type of stuff, things go wrong quick.
Yeah.
If you've got your humidity at that sort of level and you can't, it's got to be perfect for CO2 to make a huge difference. I mean, you may see some difference, but I find when I've used it in the past and when I throw a mushroom bag or something like that in there, it's always veg. It's always veg where it benefits the most. And then I'm pulling it out in flower because I'm wanting to drop those, drop the temps a little bit and drop the humidity along with it.
Rusty Nails here in the chat made up a good point. He said, be in the garden, be the CO2, which is always good advice. And if you also, there's, especially in the UK here, people usually set up the grow in their bedroom if they haven't got a spare room. So they usually sleep throughout the night in the same room as their tent. So that's 8 hours of CO2 being produced in the room and going past the plants. So that helps too. So if you want to increase your yield, you want to use CO2, just sleep next to your tents.
Sleep in your tent.
Sleep in the tent. If you can handle the light being on and shit.
I know, just put the light off at night. That's
fucking fans and shit, yeah.
They're autoflowers. Turn them off and on when you want.
But some people like that kind of thing. Each to their own.
Really?
Yeah, get your Sparky said get your VPD and DLI right, and it will make a big difference with CO2 for sure. VPD, the vapor pressure deficit, how much the plant drinks and evaporates off itself, and the DLI is the daily light intake. So just it gets a bit complex, man. Just try and keep it simple. You can make these moves when you get more experience with the grow and you starting to slow down a bit. There's not much for you to do because the grow's running smoothly all the time. Then try these new things here.
In my opinion, CO2 supplementation is probably the last thing the typical home grower should be like looking into in terms of increasing their yield. If they've done everything else and actually found that there has been an increase in yield, because like numbers also speak, a lot more than just like, yeah, I got better yield. It smells way fucking better. I mean, do you remember what it smelled like last grow? You really do. There's, I don't know. I mean, until I see like actual hard data with this kind of shit. And I was going to ask, like, in a perfect environment with CO2 supplementation, how much can you expect? How much more could you expect to see? Is it like 50% increase, or is it just like 1%? Because like, is it worth all that extra effort?
Yeah, that's how I look at it as well. Going through all that extra work and all the extra equipment and all that effort, and you're going to get 10% more.
And all the while you could have just bent your plants or fucking fed them better or something, right?
And then do you really know it would have been different? You might have just got that extra 10% anyway this time around. You know what I mean?
So I think
data, but yeah.
I think CO2 is looked at in the wrong light, to be fair. For me, CO2 is more about increasing the speed at which that plant then goes through veg, because you can speed it up and get a larger vegging plant in a shorter amount of time by boosting CO2. Okay. It's not so much about increasing your end yield as it is about increasing the speed at which you get to that end yield, if you know what I mean.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So,
but yes, unless everything else is perfect, it's pointless.
Yeah. So there's lots of different ways there which you can increase your yield. But lighting is important, making the most out of your canopy space, keeping your plants very happy, and choosing the right yield. Those are all very important factors when it comes to increasing the yield from your grow. But of course, if you need any help when you're trying to figure out different ways on how you could fix up your yield and get more out of it, just come and ask for help over at the forum. We're always happy to help. Just come along. It's all free, 100% free.
Yep.
And go watch that Jack Herrer diary over on Percy's Grow Room channel. That will show you how to get a beast ash yield out of your grow, man. That was epic. That was. I enjoyed that.
What was the end yield on that? Do you remember?
Oh, it wasn't my biggest one. It's about 24 ounces, between 24 and 25. So it wasn't bad.
How many plants was that for?
4.
It's not bad, man.
Yeah, I've done better. But yeah, it was a nice grow. It just all went so nice, so smooth, and it was fucking quality weed at the end. It was the Seedsman Jack Herrer it was, and it was just fucking gorgeous. And it was a beautiful sight, man. When it's just like just beautiful to look at and be like, damn.
You find yourself doing other things instead of harvesting when you should, because you don't want to cut it down because it looks too pretty.
Just fucking gorgeous, man. And and the scrog, the way the scrog was, it was just so. I don't want to sound like a cunt, but it was so well grown. It was a real good fucking grow, man. I did well on that one. There's grows which I've seen, which myself do, which I'm like, you did a fucking bit of a shit job there, mate.
Oh yeah.
And there's ones which I've seen which like, fucking hell, man, you can actually do this really good when you put your mind to it.
Yeah, some of those that don't look the best, they yield really well. So like, well, man, that's a 10 is a mess, but the yield knocks it out the park sometimes.
Yeah. But DWC, it has been like the craziest plants I've ever seen. The biggest yields I've ever seen have come from DWC. I've grown one plant in a 60 centimeter tent in DWC in a 25-liter pot. And my first grow it was a blue cheese. I think it was an Exodus cheese or a blue cheese. It was a cheese. Can't remember exactly which one. But it's like got 6.5 ounces off it from a 60 centimeter tent. One plant just jam packed. This fucking 60 centimeter tent, man.
Bursting the zips open.
A little 250 watt HPS as well. It was goddamn in a cooling tube. It was fucking crazy. 4-inch extraction. I had no idea what was going on. And I got 6.5 ounces off that fuck. I was like, damn. And then it just getting a bigger tent now.
Yeah, that's I've got too many tents now. I know people say you can never have too many, but this is the reason why. You're like, I need a bigger tent. It was just too small that run.
Yeah, you don't need another tent. You just need a bigger tent.
Yeah, the next minute I'll be mylaring the walls in the room.
Exactly. Well, they didn't make one the size I wanted.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, man, just as long as you keep the plants happy, you're going to get a decent yield. And when you do push it for that extra bit, you're not going to get huge amounts different to what you're already doing if the plant's been happy for the whole grow. You just get a little bit more. But have fun with it. Have fun training the plants, because training the plant is fun. For me, it's fun. I like being hands-on like that, and don't like to just let them grow. I want to be involved in the growing process as well. And that's why I enjoy scrogging, because scrogging, you're involved every day at some point throughout the grow there during the early flower. Just there every day, training the plant, tucking and training. It's good fun. I enjoy it. So figure out what's good for you. And that's the thing we recommend the most on all of these things. Just figure out what's right for you, what works well for you, and do your thing, man.
Experiment. It's the name of the game.
It's a hobby, man. It's a hobby. You just get a nice thing at the end of it.
That's how I explain it to the missus. Why do you spend so much time back there? It's my hobby. I just like doing it. That's all I can explain.
Yeah.
I don't mind taking the time.
As long as you're growing, it's more of a yield you'll be get if you wasn't growing. You know what I'm saying? So grow. How do you increase your yield? Grow for one.
Yeah.
Make sure you're doing it
better every grow. That's what you do.
Yeah, I think out of it, the basics and strain choice are really the biggest things. If you're really chasing yield, like some of those what do they call it, the exotic styles, they're not designed in themselves. They're not bred to be monster plants. So you're only going to get some smaller plants out of them. But if you're shooting for things like GSC, some of the bigger hazes and some Northern Lights and things, even Northern Lights can be touch and go depending on the genetics of it. But a lot of those are going to yield big plants. They're known to yield big plants. So look for that sort of thing if that's what you're pushing.
And let us know how you do over at percysgrowroom.com. We want to see it. But we do have some listener mail, just a couple of listener mail questions that we'll get to here before we wrap things up. We one from Filmy Balls. He said, do you think you would be possible to grow outside in a small greenhouse in California during the winter time by turning on a grow light to make up lost daylight?
Absolutely. It's doable. In Oregon, when I was there, went through their greenhouse, it was also a light deprivation type greenhouse. And they did have just supplementary light. Now, the thing about the lights that you're adding, you don't have to have full illumination on those times after the sun goes down, just enough to prevent the plant from going in, out of flower, kind of in and out of flower. You want to just control the light cycle. So yeah, you can do it, definitely. You just
How cold is it getting in Cali down there in winter?
Well, he didn't say anything about the heat. So, I mean, situation, you usually supplement a little bit of heat, but other than that, it's doable by all means. Your neighbors may have a little bit of complaints because that light's going to be on a few hours after dark, but nothing wrong with that.
No different to someone leaving a spotlight on in their backyard.
True, as long as it's not on all night where it's bothering somebody. Yeah.
It
doesn't have to be full illumination though. You don't have to be blasting that plant with 700 par. You can have just enough to prevent it from flipping the flower when you still want it in veg.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, but that's pretty fucking sweet. That is growing in the winter in your back garden and shit with the light in the greenhouse. That'd be a nice way to do things.
Yep.
It's definitely better than having it indoors for 18.6. You know what I'm saying? A lot cheaper. Yes. So anything else to add to that? Marge, you got anything to say? You're outdoor grower. Would you do this up in Canada? I suppose it's too cold for you, right?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, we have a season and it's short, and there's no greenhouse. I don't think that's gonna make it in the winter.
Actually, Marge, that Northern Lights haze cart you're token on there?
Yeah.
So those guys in northern Saskatchewan actually have light deprivation greenhouse or light deprivation of some sort, and they grow outdoors, and that's how they grow in fucking northern Saskatchewan.
Really?
Yeah. But
well, I'm not about to do that.
In terms of keeping stuff into veg, though, I've watched documentaries where they've done that on the mountainsides in Colombia. They had a bunch of around and kept everything in veg until they just turned them off and then it flowered. So
Yeah, that's pretty wild because northern Saskatchewan in the wintertime would be pretty fucking cold.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's not
I
even
mean-
fully winter yet, and TG's telling us about -20 and
Yeah.
shit.
The way
Yeah.
they just force flower earlier though, right? So
Yeah.
it can finish. That's the whole
Yeah, so
mindset.
there you go, Phil. You can do it. So do it
Yeah.
and send us pictures over on Percy's because we want to see it too.
Yeah.
That'd
Yeah.
be nice.
But
We
the
have
thing
a
is, you say
sorry.
he's also saying that he has house lights on throughout his backyard. That may cause a problem in your flowering stage. If it's not dark enough back there, it may not flip,
Mhm.
depending
This
upon
is
the
a
intensity.
good reason
there,
to
so,
grow your autos then.
yeah, autos will work just fine.
Mm-hmm. So do the autos, then you can smash it with as much light as you can till the end.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about that shit then.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Southern California is going to have a lot of problems with the cold greenhouse. I've grown in wintertime in a greenhouse where I am, and if I can do it, he could definitely handle it too.
Yeah, you're going to be way more humid, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a situation that with the greenhouse. I mean, I was able to do a small greenhouse. I think the one at the time that I had was maybe about 8 foot by 10 foot. And we were able to keep it heated with a 500-watt ceramic heater that didn't have to run all the time or anything like that, just cycled as needed. So
Yeah.
it's not that, I mean, a little bit of heat goes a long way in a properly built greenhouse.
Sweet. So then we have a question from Firetop here. What's the best way to maximize the use of outdoor compost or compost on an indoor grow other than compost tea? I'm worried about bringing unwanted mini beasts inside and have an amazing amount of composted soil that I would like to use if possible. Any suggestions will be appreciated. A properly cooked compost shouldn't have too many mini beasts in it, right? TG, this is your kind of criteria here. This is your field of expertise.
I mean, depending on where it's stored and how it's stored outside, if it's, I mean, I assume you're making it outside. Yeah. The way I do it is mine's in an open environment, so it's open to whatever the fuck wants to go live in it. And then I just put it in drums, barrels, plastic barrels after, and it lives in there. So a lot of the time when I come in, if I'm using stuff, I'll get ants sometimes in my pots, and I'll be like, where the fuck, why are these ants crawling on my plants? Yeah, that rhymes. It's good.
It's good.
Yeah, but it's like, for the most part, I've never really had an issue with bringing in like a bunch of thrips or some shit like that, or really bad stuff. The best way to use it, like compost tea, honestly, is probably the best to avoid all of that, because you get, you know, the benefits of compost minus the aeration and the material kind of characteristics that it has and what it does with those in the soil. But you get all the benefits of the microbes and stuff if that's what you're after with compost tea. For myself, like, I don't know if it's the best way to use it, but it's the way I use it. Is when I'm making my pots of soil, I usually will, depending on how big the pot is, I'll fill the pot about, you know, half, fuck's sakes, half full ish. And then I'll take about a fistful of my compost, just like right out of my pail, chuck it in my soil and kind of mix it around a bit. And then later on, about maybe 2-3 weeks into flower, I usually top dress my pots with some compost mixed with super soil, like a 1-to-1 ratio kind of thing. And I don't know, I've had really good results with that, using good quality compost, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it depends probably what's in it and how you're storing it. And if it's like, you know, full of shit, it's probably hard to get that shit out, even if you do use compost tea and stuff. So
yeah, I would say that's the best way to use it, other than compost tea. Yeah, which he says here in the question, is you mix them with your soil when you first put your pots together. It's a great way to get it mixed in there with the soil, and that's local microbes and shit then, which is the plants love that shit. So make sure you do that. And then just top dressing when the plant needs a little bit more food. Top dress some of that compost around it, water it in. Plants will be happy as fuck. But when it comes to the beasties, that's just something to be expected, really. You're still going to get a few bugs, but your plants should be healthy with a nice immune system. And because you've used local made compost, they're going to be more, they're going to be better at defending against local pathogens, and they have
Honestly,
a good immune system.
if it's really good compost, you shouldn't really have like, I think you're maybe talking about like root eating nematodes and fucking root aphids and just shit like bad stuff in the soil. Generally, like thrips, you're not gonna have a bunch of thrip eggs in your compost, and then when you put them in your soil inside, they just like hatch and go all psycho or whatever. And same goes for like fungus gnat. Maybe you'll get a couple, but again, compost is a pretty harsh environment for that kind of shit.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of shit,
and it gets
around.
hot as well, and it's supposed to get hot enough when it's being made. When it's sitting there in the pile, in the middle of the pile, there, it's going to get hot enough to kill off eggs and different pathogens like that.
Yeah,
so,
it's only if they come in afterwards, really, and if it's poorly stored. So, yeah, I've noticed rove beetles and stuff, like actual other beneficial insects that I never introduced myself, have come in with them, which is great. You might get some springtails, which are not harmful at all. Springtails are great to have too. But yeah, I guess I would say just integrate a proper IPM too. You'd be using beneficial insects like mites and nematodes for your soil, for the thrips and for fungus gnats and stuff like that, in addition to bringing compost in, because hopefully they'll cancel each other out if there's any bad stuff with the defenses you're using.
Yeah, man. So there you go, Firetop. I hope that answers your question, man. Just use it. It's good that you're making the compost as well. So, keep making it, keep using it. And it's a lot better for the environment, anyway, which is being mentioned there in chat as well. Try and be more of a sustainable grower, and using organic compost shit that you've made yourself from kitchen scraps is far better than using salt-based nutrients, which have been imported from halfway across the world. So do that if you can. But whatever's best for you, man. Figure out what's right for you and do it. Just do it. Do it now. But that's all the questions we have, and that's about everything we can say on how to increase the yield of your grow. I hope we've said useful shit here, and you've all learned something and can apply some of these different things to your grow. But of course, we want you to come and share your grow with us over on percysgrowroom.com. Come and sign up over there and start a diary. As we've said many times, it's completely free. You just sign up.
Trolls. Hey.
Yeah, no trolls.
Yeah, no trolls.
Apart from me, I like to troll sometimes.
You got to deal with Mackie and Billy. You know how that goes.
Yeah, that's right. But everybody else is all right. And there we go, everybody. That was this week's Grow Guide. If you have any questions, then of course you can find us over at percysgrowroom.com. You can ask any questions you like over there, and we're always happy to answer. So make sure you come over and sign up if you haven't done that already. And just to remind you, there are 4 competitions going on over the next 4 weeks over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/highandhomegrown. Get over there, make sure you're involved in the competition. All you have to do is comment in the chat box and you'll be added to the wheel of names. It will be spun and that will choose the winners for a $75 voucher and a $50 voucher. 2 prizes to give away every week. We hope to see you over there. But for now, enjoy your weekend and we'll catch you on Sunday for the live show. And if you can't make it, then of course there'll be the cannabis news on Monday. Have a good weekend, everybody. Stay high, stay safe. We'll see you then. Goodbye.